What if the real danger today is not war, not poverty, not even corruption, but stupidity pretending to be wisdom? We live in a world where noise is celebrated more than silence, where loud voices are mistaken for truth, and where people confuse information with real knowledge. Every day, we are surrounded by shallow performances that look like intelligence, but are nothing more than empty words. Think about it. How often do you see someone online acting as if they know everything? Yet, when you really listen, there's nothing deep in what they say. The education system trained us for this. From the time we were children, school rewarded us for repeating what was written in the textbook, not for questioning it. It punished curiosity, punished imagination, punished thinking for yourself. It prepared us not to be wise, but to be obedient. And today, this problem has only grown worse. Technology has turned attention into money. The more someone can keep your eyes on the screen, the more valuable they are. But to keep your attention, they don't give you truth. They give you stimulation-right images, short clips, catchy slogans, things that make you feel entertained, not enlightened. The world doesn't want you to be deep. It wants you to stay shallow, because shallow people are easier to control, easier to sell to, easier to silence. That's why everywhere you look, you see a celebration of the surface. Trends rise and fall every hour. Opinions are thrown around. Like confetti, nobody stops to ask, is this true? Is this real? Instead, the only question people ask is, does this feel good to me right now? And that is why wisdom is disappearing. Because wisdom rarely feels good at first. Wisdom is heavy. It makes you uncomfortable. It forces you to face truths you'd rather avoid. But the world doesn't reward that. It rewards speed, performance, and entertainment. The one who can speak the loudest is believed, not the one who speaks with depth. And in this circus of noise, stupidity becomes powerful. The empty voice, the shallow thought, the confident fool, they dominate. This is why we live in an age where the stupidest people are the loudest people. They drown out the wise because noise spreads faster than silence. And yet, wisdom has not died. It survives quietly in those who still search for it, in those who are not satisfied with illusions, in those who would rather sit with uncomfortable truths and be distracted by comforting lies. The sad part is, most people cannot tell the difference anymore. They think that confidence is the same as intelligence, that popularity is the same as truth. But popularity only measures how well. Something flatters people's feelings, not how true it is. And in a world addicted to comfort, truth often feels offensive. That is why wisdom has become dangerous. It cannot be bought. It cannot be controlled. A wise mind sees through the games, through the illusions, through the fake performances. And a system fears that. Society does not fear stupidity, it uses it. What it fears is a mind that thinks freely, because such a mind cannot be manipulated. So what does the world do? It creates systems to destroy wisdom before it even has a chance to grow. Schools train children to memorize instead of imagine. Workplaces bury creativity under endless rules and meaningless tasks. Media floods every moment of silence with distraction. Everything is designed to keep you too busy, too tired, too distracted to ever think for yourself. And yet, wisdom survives. Not in the crowd, but in the individual. Not in the noise, but in the quiet moments. Not in the flood of opinions, but in the courage of someone who dares to stop and question. That is where wisdom lives. The real tragedy is not that wisdom has died. It hasn't. The tragedy is that stupidity has been crowned king. That ignorance is now defended as if it were sacred. That truth is rejected for being too harsh, while illusion is embraced for being comforting. This is the sickness of our time. But you, if you are still listening, if you are still searching, prove that wisdom is not gone, because the search itself is proof. The one who questions, the one who doubts the easy answer, the one who refuses. The shallow distraction, that person keeps wisdom alive. But why does society celebrate stupidity and silence wisdom? The answer is simple. Stupidity is useful. A person who cannot think deeply is easier to entertain, easier to convince, and easier to control. Stupidity is fuel for the machine. It keeps people busy chasing trends, buying things they don't need, and arguing over things that don't matter. Have you noticed how most arguments today are empty? People fight endlessly online, but the fights are never about truth. They are about pride, about defending an identity, about proving you belong to one side or the other. And in these fights, it doesn't matter who is right. What matters is who can shout louder, who can humiliate the other, who can make the crowd laugh. This is not wisdom. This is theater. And theater is what society loves, because theater distracts us from reality. Wisdom is the opposite. Wisdom is quiet. It does not entertain. It does not flatter. It does not care about applause. Wisdom asks you to face yourself, to question your beliefs, to admit you are wrong. And that is painful. That is why most people avoid it. They would rather stay in the comfort of illusions. And yet, deep down, every person knows when something is missing. You feel it late at night, when the noise dies down, when the screen goes dark, when no one is watching. A quiet voice inside you whispers, "Is this really all there is?" That is the call of wisdom. Most ignore it. They drown it with distraction. But some listen, and those few change everything. Think of history. The ones who truly shaped the world were rarely the loudest in their time. Socrates was hated for asking uncomfortable questions. Galileo was silenced for seeing what others refused to see. Nietzsche was mocked for warning of a future without meaning. Wisdom is always rejected at first because it does not serve the system. It threatens it. But with time, truth cannot be buried. It rises, no matter how deep it is pushed down. The danger today is that people no longer even recognize wisdom when they see it. They confuse it with clever slogans or motivational speeches. They want shortcuts, instant solutions, 5 easy steps to happiness. But wisdom is not a shortcut. Wisdom is a long road. It takes patience, silence, and the courage to look into places most people avoid. But here's the problem. The modern world has no patience. Everything is designed to be fast. Fast news, fast entertainment, fast opinions. People don't read books anymore. They scroll headlines. They don't listen. They skim. They don't think, they react. And in this race, wisdom always loses, because wisdom takes time. That's why stupidity spreads like fire. It requires no effort. A lie, a joke, a shallow opinion, these can travel across the world in seconds. But a deep truth? That requires you to stop, to think, to reflect. And in a culture addicted to speed, who has time for that? So the question is, how do you survive in such a world? How do you protect wisdom in yourself when everything around you is designed to kill it? The answer is not easy. You cannot change the system by shouting at it. You cannot force people to see what they are not ready to see. But you can choose differently for yourself. You can reclaim silence. You can practice patience. You can refuse to be entertained by empty illusions. You can protect your mind like a garden, not letting weeds of distraction choke it. And that is exactly what society fears the most. Because one individual who thinks clearly, who is not controlled by the noise, is more dangerous than 1,000 who follow blindly. That is why the system works so hard to keep you distracted. It knows the power of a single free mind. Look at your own life. How often do you trade silence for noise? How often do you reach for your phone the moment you feel bored? How often do you avoid difficult questions by drowning yourself in entertainment? Be honest. because this is where it begins. Not in politics, not in schools, not in the media. It begins with you. The war on wisdom is fought inside every human mind. And most people surrender without even knowing it. But you don't have to. You can resist in small ways. You can pause before reacting. You can question before believing. You can choose to learn slowly, deeply, instead of chasing fast information. These small acts are revolutionary in a time like ours. They are not glamorous. They will not make you popular, but they will make you strong, because in the end, wisdom is not about knowing more facts. It is about seeing through illusions. It is about understanding what is real, even when the world prefers lies. And when you live with that clarity, you become free in a way most people will never understand. Of course, freedom is not easy. It costs you comfort. It may cost you friends. It may even cost you acceptance in society. But ask yourself, what is the price of staying blind? What is the cost of living in illusions, of spending your life entertained but empty? At least with wisdom, your pain has meaning. Without it, your pleasure is meaningless. This is the choice every human must face: to remain comfortable in stupidity, or to walk the harder path of wisdom. Most choose comfort. But if you are still here, still listening, then maybe you are not like most. Maybe you are searching for something real, even if it hurts. And if that is true, then you are already on the path. The world will not make it easy. It will laugh at you, distract you, tempt you. It will try to make you feel alone. But remember this: every great mind in history also felt alone. Every seeker of wisdom faced rejection. It is the price of seeing clearly in a world that prefers blindness. So don't fear the loneliness. Don't fear the silence. Don't fear being misunderstood. These are signs that you are walking the right road. The loud voices will come and go. Their noise will fade. But wisdom, though quiet, endures. It always has, and it always will. But maybe you're wondering, if wisdom is so important, why do people avoid it? Why do they run from it as if it were a burden? The answer is simple. Wisdom makes you responsible. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Once you know the game, you can't pretend you don't. And most people would rather stay in the dark because ignorance feels safer. Think of it like this. A child believes the world is fair, that every good deed is rewarded, that every bad deed is punished. It feels good to believe that. It gives comfort. But when you grow up, you see the world is not fair. You see injustice, you see corruption, you see good people suffering and bad people thriving. And suddenly that comfort is gone. That's what wisdom does. It destroys illusions. And most people prefer a sweet lie over a bitter truth. But here is the irony. Only by facing the bitter truth can you find real strength. A lie may comfort you today, but it will betray you tomorrow. A truth may hurt you today, but it will protect you tomorrow. That is why the path of wisdom feels hard at first, but becomes easier over time. The path of ignorance feels easy at first, but becomes unbearable in the end. Society knows this. That's why it gives people endless illusions to choose from. Politics, celebrity drama, consumer products, fake gurus. It doesn't matter what the illusion is, as long as it keeps you distracted. They sell you the idea that happiness is just one more purchase away, one more experience away, one more click away. And yet, the more you consume, the emptier you feel. Have you noticed that? That emptiness is not an accident. It is the result of living in illusions. And when someone begins to wake up, when they start to see through the illusions, society reacts with hostility. People don't like being reminded that their comfort is fake. They get angry when you question the things. They worship. They call you negative, arrogant, or even dangerous. That is why so many wise voices in history were silenced. Not because they were wrong, but because they were right. So what do you do when you see the truth, but the world rejects it? You stay silent, or do you speak? Both paths have their cost. Silence protects you, but it feels like betrayal. Speaking brings risk, but it keeps your soul alive. This is the eternal struggle of wisdom, knowing when to stay hidden and when to stand up. But even if you choose silence, even if you keep your wisdom to yourself, it changes you. It changes the way you move, the way you think, the way you respond to life. You stop being controlled by trends. You stop needing validation. You stop fearing rejection. Because once you see the truth, the world loses its power over you. That is freedom, and freedom is what society fears most. Because a free mind cannot be bought. It cannot be controlled. It cannot be forced into submission. That's why the world prefers stupidity. It keeps people in cages they don't even see. But when you wake up, when you step out of the cage, you realize the door was always open. You were just too distracted to notice. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in silence without reaching for a distraction? When was the last time you thought deeply about your own life, about where you are going, about why you do the things you do? Most people are afraid to face these questions because they know the answers will demand change. And change is uncomfortable, but the truth is, nothing changes until you face it. You cannot build a new life while clinging to illusions. You cannot grow stronger while refusing to see your own weakness. You cannot be free while running from the truth. The first step is always the hardest, the step of honesty with yourself. That is why wisdom begins inside. It doesn't come from books alone, or teachers, or philosophers. It begins when you are willing to look in the mirror and not turn away. It begins when you stop lying to yourself, even when the truth hurts. It begins when you decide that comfort is not worth the price of blindness. And once you take that step, you begin to see the world differently. You notice the lies in advertisements. You notice the manipulation in politics. You notice the emptiness in shallow conversations. Things that once seemed normal begin to look absurd. And at first, this can feel lonely. Because now you are awake in a room full of sleepers. You try to shake them, to warn them, but they don't want to wake up. They get angry at you for trying. And you realize you cannot force others to see what they are not ready to see. This is one of the hardest lessons of wisdom. You can guide, but you cannot control. You can share, but you cannot force. Each person must choose for themselves when they are ready to wake up. Until then, they will defend their illusions like treasures. And if you try to take them away, they will see you as the enemy. So what should you do? Protect your wisdom. Grow it quietly. Live it rather than argue about it. People may not understand your words, but they will notice your presence. They will notice the calm in your voice, the strength in your silence, the clarity in your choices. That is how wisdom spreads, not through shouting, but through example. Remember, wisdom is not about winning arguments. It is not about proving you are smarter than others. That is just another trap of the ego. Real wisdom is about living in truth, even when no one applauds. It is about choosing clarity over comfort, growth over laziness, honesty over illusions. Yes, it is a heavy path. At times you will feel tired, misunderstood, and alone. But you will also feel something deeper peace. Not the shallow peace of distraction, but the deep peace that comes from knowing you are no longer lying to yourself. That peace is worth more than all the noise of the world. So when you feel the pressure to join the crowd, to chase trends, to drown in noise, pause. Ask yourself, is this really me? Or is this just the illusion pulling me? That pause, that simple moment of awareness, is the spark of wisdom. And if you protect it, it will grow. But here's the painful truth: most people are not looking for wisdom. They are looking for entertainment. They want distraction, not discovery. They want something that feels good for a moment, not something that changes them forever. That's why shallow voices always rise to the top. They give the crowd what it craves: comfort, noise, distraction. And wisdom, which demands effort and honesty, it's buried under it all. Look around you. How many people can spend hours scrolling, but not even 10 minutes reflecting on their own life? How many people repeat popular opinions, but cannot explain what they truly believe? How many people chase success, but never ask themselves what success even means? This is the tragedy of our age. Not lack of knowledge, but lack of depth. And yet, inside each person, there is still a quiet voice that longs for more. Even the most distracted soul feels it sometimes late at night, when the noise fades, when the phone is finally set down, when the mask slips. That little whisper inside says, there must be more to life than this. That whisper is the seed of wisdom. The problem is, most people quickly silence it. They turn the volume up again. They run back to distraction, because listening to that whisper means admitting something is missing. But here's the secret. The whisper never goes away. It waits. It waits in silence, in moments of pain, in moments of loss. It returns every time the illusions crack. And if you are brave enough to listen, it will lead you to truth. The question is, will you listen? Or will you keep silencing it? This is where the journey divides. Most people choose the easy path. They numb themselves with entertainment, possessions, or approval. But a few, just a rare few, decide to follow the whisper. They step into silence. They question what they were taught. They look at the world with fresh eyes. And that is when wisdom begins to take root. Of course, a path is not glamorous. It won't make you instantly popular. In fact, it may cost you friends. It may make people label you as strange, distant, or difficult, because you no longer fit neatly into their illusions. And that is frightening to them. But what they call strange, the wise call awakening. What they call distant, the wise call freedom. What they call difficult, the wise call truth. And once you taste this freedom, you realize how little you truly need. You no longer need the endless approval of others. You no longer need to follow every trend. You no longer need to keep up with the exhausting race of comparison. You see clearly, most of what society tells you to chase is meaningless. It does not bring peace. It does not bring fulfillment. It only keeps you busy until life slips away. This realization is both liberating and terrifying, because now the responsibility falls on you. You can no longer blame the system, the crowd, or your circumstances. You see the truth. Your life is in your hands. What you do with it is your choice. That freedom is heavy. And that is why so many run back to the cage. They fear the weight of their own power. But if you are brave enough to hold that weight, everything changes. You begin to live intentionally. You choose what to value instead of letting society choose for you. You define success for yourself instead of letting trends define it. You build relationships that matter instead of wasting time on shallow approval. You become, in the quietest sense, untouchable. And yet, even here, there is danger, because the ego can twist wisdom into arrogance. It can whisper, "You see more than others. You are better than them." But that is just another illusion. Real wisdom is humble. It knows that truth is endless, that no one has all the answers, that even the wisest are still students. The moment you think you are superior, you fall back into ignorance. This humility is what protects wisdom from becoming pride. It reminds you that the journey never ends. There is always more to learn, more to unlearn, more to discover. The wise are not those who have all the answers, but those who remain open to questions. And the greatest question of all is this: how? Will you live now that you see? Will you hide your light to stay comfortable? Or will you carry it into the world, even when it feels heavy? Because wisdom is not just for you. It is not something to hoard. It is something to embody. The world may reject your words, but it cannot ignore your life. When you live in truth, you become a mirror. And some people, even if only a few, will see themselves in that reflection and begin to awaken too. This is how change spreads, not through noise, but through presence. Not through lectures, but through example. A calm soul in a noisy world is more powerful than 1,000 voices shouting lies. So when you feel small, when you feel unheard, remember this. Your wisdom matters, even if only one person notices. Because one person awakened is enough to awaken another. And over time, the ripple grows. That is how history changes, not by crowds chasing illusions, but by rare souls choosing truth. This is why the world fears wisdom, because it cannot be controlled. It cannot be marketed. It cannot be bought or sold. It spreads quietly in ways no system can stop. And so they try to drown it out with louder distractions, flashier illusions. But deep down, they know truth always returns. And that is where you stand now, on the edge. The crowd is calling you back into comfort. The whisper is calling you forward into truth. Which voice will you follow? Most people will never take that. Step forward. They will hear the whisper once or twice, maybe even feel the pull of truth for a moment. But then they will quickly run back to comfort. They will convince themselves that they are fine as they are, that life is already good enough, that the cost of searching for more is too high. And so they silence the whisper with noise. They cover it with busyness. They bury it under excuses. And little by little, that small fire inside them fades until it is nothing more than smoke. But if you refuse to run, if you decide to stay, with the discomfort, if you dare to face the silence, something extraordinary happens. The whisper grows stronger. It stops being a faint sound at the edge of your awareness and becomes a voice that cannot be ignored. It starts to guide you, question you, and challenge you. It reveals truths that you once avoided. It asks you to look at yourself honestly, without disguise, without defense. And this is the hardest part, because real wisdom does not begin with learning. It begins with unlearning. You must strip away the lies you were taught, the illusions you were sold, the beliefs you borrowed without thinking. You must let go of the masks that kept you safe, the false identities you wore to please others, the dreams that were never really yours. This process feels like dying, because in a way, it is. The false self must die before the true self can live. Most people cannot bear this. They cling to their masks as if without them they would vanish. But those who endure discover something incredible. What remains after the mask is gone is not emptiness, but freedom. You realize you do not need to perform for others anymore. You do not need to play roles that exhaust you. You can be real. And being real is the rarest power in the world. But of course, this freedom comes with loneliness. Because once you step out of illusion, you no longer belong fully to the crowd. You see the games they play, the lies they believe, and it all feels shallow. Conversations that once entertained you now feel empty. Goals that once excited you now seem pointless. It can feel like you are drifting apart from everyone around you. But loneliness is not the enemy. It is the proof that you are leaving the cage. And if you can sit with it, if you can let it sharpen you instead of weaken you, you will discover that loneliness is actually a gift, because it forces you to rely on your own soul. It teaches you to draw strength from within instead of always seeking it from others. It shows you that you are enough on your own. This is the moment when most people give up. They cannot bear the silence, the solitude, the absence of applause. They run back to the comfort of the crowd. But those who stay, those who endure the lonely fire emerge as something different. They become individuals. And an individual is the most dangerous thing to a society built on conformity. Why? Because an individual cannot be controlled by fear of rejection. They cannot be bribed with shallow rewards. They cannot be manipulated with illusions. They see too clearly. They have nothing to prove. They do not need permission to live as they choose. And that kind of freedom shakes the foundations of the system. This is why history's greatest thinkers, prophets, and creators were often rejected in their time. The crowd mocked them, resisted them, even tried to silence them. But in the end, their words endured, because truth, once spoken, cannot be erased. Lies may be louder, but truth is stronger. And now, the same choice stands before you. Will you be another voice lost in the noise? Or will you dare to step into the silence? Will you spend your life repeating what others say? Or will you discover what you truly think? Will you wear the masks handed to you? Or will you carve your own face? It will not be easy. At times you will doubt yourself. At times you will feel foolish, weak, or lost. But understand this. Doubt is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of growth. It means you are moving beyond what is comfortable. It means you are stretching beyond the cage. Only those who risk doubt ever find truth. And slowly, as you keep walking, as you keep listening, something begins to shift. You start to see patterns where others see chaos. You start to notice connections that others overlook. You begin to read people's intentions, not just their words. You begin to sense the hidden forces that move society, the hunger for power, the fear of rejection, the endless chase for meaning. You begin to see the game beneath the surface. At first, this vision feels heavy. It is painful to see through illusions that others still believe in. You may feel tempted to close your eyes, to go back to sleep, to pretend you never saw the truth. But if you resist that temptation, if you keep your eyes open, that vision becomes your greatest strength. Because you can no longer be fooled. You can no longer be trapped by lies. You carry within you a compass that points to what is real. Even when the whole world is lost in illusion, this is wisdom. Not perfect knowledge, not endless facts, not superiority over others, but the quiet strength of seeing clearly. And once you see clearly, you can never truly be powerless again. The crowd may ignore you. The world may mock you. But deep inside, you will know who you are and what you stand for. And that is something no one can take away from you. So ask yourself, again, are you willing to pay the price of truth? Are you willing to walk through the loneliness, the doubt, the silence? Are you willing to let go of the masks that once defined you? Because if you are, you will find something the crowd never will. A life that is truly your own. And isn't that what we are all secretly searching for? Imagine this for a moment. You are standing in a crowded street. Everyone is moving quickly, rushing somewhere, chasing something. Their eyes are filled with hunger for approval, for money, for recognition, for distraction. They push past one another, not seeing, not hearing, only chasing. And there you stand, still, not rushing, not chasing, simply watching. At first, they barely notice you. You are invisible to them, just another face in the blur. But then something strange happens. One by one, their eyes drift toward you. They cannot explain it, but something about your stillness unsettles them. They feel exposed, as if your calm presence is a mirror reflecting their restlessness. Some glance away quickly, some frown, some even feel anger. Why? Because your refusal to play their game reminds them that the game is not the only option. This is the quiet power of awakening. You do not need to shout it. You do not need to preach it. You only need to live it. And by living it, you disturb the illusions of those still asleep. But make no mistake, this disturbance will not always make you friends. Some will envy your calm. Some will resent your clarity. Some will try to pull you back into the noise, mocking you for being different, accusing you of arrogance, calling you strange. And in those moments, you will be tempted to give in, to shrink, to join them again. Have you ever noticed how the truth rarely goes viral, but lies spread like wildfire? It's not because people love lies. It's because lies are easier. They comfort, they flatter, they demand nothing from you. The truth, on the other hand, is heavy. It forces you to see what you'd rather avoid. And when someone speaks truth, the crowd doesn't cheer. The crowd turns away. Because truth asks for responsibility, while illusion gives you escape. This is why the modern world glorifies stupidity. It is not really stupidity that people love. It is comfort. It is the promise that you can drift through life without questioning, without struggling, without carrying the weight of awareness. Wisdom makes you awake, but comfort makes you numb. And numbness is the easiest way to live. Think about how people use social media. The endless scrolling, the quick likes, the shallow comments. It is all a performance of intelligence without any depth. Everyone has an opinion on everything, but nobody takes the time to study, to reflect, to doubt their own position. Why? Because reflection takes time, silence, humility, and these are the things our world has trained us to avoid. Silence feels awkward, reflection feels boring, humility feels weak. So instead, people choose noise, distraction, and arrogance. Yet, beneath all the noise, there is a hunger for something real, something deep, something that doesn't vanish as quickly as the next trend. Why do you think so many people feel empty even after hours of scrolling, after endless entertainment? Because their mind knows the difference between food and junk. Wisdom is food. Stupidity is junk. And the more junk you consume, the hungrier you remain. The saddest part is that the world punishes those who resist this system. If you choose silence, people call you strange. If you choose reflection, people call you slow. If you choose to question, people call you difficult. If you don't join the noise, the crowd rejects you. This is why so many people betray their own intelligence just to fit in. They know what is true, but they silence it. They see through the illusions, but they pretend not to. Because standing apart feels terrifying. But here's the paradox. Every wise person in history has stood apart. Socrates was mocked. Nietzsche was ridiculed. Galileo was condemned. Prophets were ignored. The pattern is always the same. The crowd laughs first, then listens later. The crowd always resists truth until time forces them to see it. And yet, in every generation, someone still dares to speak. Why? Because wisdom is not just an idea, it's a responsibility. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Maybe that is why you feel different from others. Maybe that's why you've always felt like you couldn't fully fit in with the games people play, the shallow conversations, the obsession with trends. Maybe you've always carried questions that others found uncomfortable. If so, that is not weakness. It is proof that you are searching for wisdom in a world that wants you to stay asleep. The truth is, the world needs more people like that. It doesn't need more performers, more pretenders, more parrots repeating what they were told. It needs people who can see clearly, even when the crowd refuses to. Because wisdom spreads differently than stupidity. Stupidity spreads fast, like fire, but it burns out just as quickly. Wisdom spreads slowly, like roots, but once it grows, it lasts forever. Ask yourself, do you want to live like fire, loud and short-lived, or like roots, silent but eternal? That's the choice you face every day. Do you follow the noise, or do you search for the signal hidden within it? Do you chase comfort, or do you carry the weight of truth? Do you want to be celebrated now, or remembered later. The world glorifies stupidity because it is easy, but wisdom is never easy. Wisdom demands sacrifice. It demands you to let go of illusions, to endure loneliness, to carry the burden of seeing what others cannot. But in return, it gives you something the crowd will never have: freedom. Freedom from manipulation, freedom from distraction, freedom from the endless cycle of shallow pleasures. Think of the last time you were alone, really alone. No phone, no noise, no distractions. Just you and your thoughts. Did it scare you? Did you feel restless, like you needed to escape? That's the conditioning at work. The system has trained you to fear silence, because silence is where wisdom begins. If you want to know yourself, if you want to see reality clearly, you must first face silence, and most people cannot. That is why they drown in noise. But you can be different. You can choose to use silence, not run from it. You can train yourself to sit with uncomfortable truths until they stop feeling like enemies and start feeling like teachers. Because every uncomfortable truth hides a key to understanding, a key to freedom, a key to growth. The death of wisdom is not final. It is only final if no one chooses to revive it. And reviving it does not take 1,000 people. It begins with one person who decides to stop playing the game. One person who dares to question. One person who refuses to be distracted. That one person becomes a light in the dark. And light does not need permission to shine. It only needs courage. So maybe the real question is not, why does the world glorify stupidity? The real question is, will you accept that, or will you choose wisdom anyway? Because the world will always try to seduce you into the easy path. The path of distraction, of arrogance, of shallow pleasures. But in the end, only the difficult path leads to meaning. And though it may feel lonely, though it may feel heavy, remember this: the path of wisdom has always been walked by the few, and the few have always changed the world. Have you ever wondered why the smartest voices are often the quietest ones in the room? It's because wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers. And in a world addicted to noise, whispers are ignored. But the irony is, the whisper often carries more truth than the loudest scream. The modern world has become an arena, not of truth seekers, but of performers. Everyone is acting. Everyone is trying to look smart, successful, confident. But here's the hidden tragedy. When everyone is performing, no one is learning. Because learning requires humility. It requires admitting you don't know. It requires silence. And silence is the one thing people fear the most. Today, think about how uncomfortable people become when there's a pause in conversation. The silence feels unbearable, so they fill it with meaningless chatter. But why? Because silence exposes. It reveals how shallow the connection really is. It shows who actually has depth and who only survives by noise. That is why people run from silence, because in silence, they cannot hide. And this is where stupidity finds its stage. Stupidity thrives in noise. It thrives in quick reactions, in instant opinions, in emotional outbursts. It thrives in a world where people value speed over accuracy, confidence over truth, performance over substance. The more noise, the more stupidity can camouflage itself as intelligence. And the sad part? Most people can't tell the difference. But let's go deeper. Why is wisdom so rare? Why do we glorify what is shallow while ignoring what is deep? The answer is simple. Wisdom costs something. Stupidity doesn't. To be wise, you have to lose illusions. You have to let go of comforting lies. You have to face uncomfortable realities. You have to admit your own ignorance again and again. That hurts. That takes courage. Meanwhile, stupidity demands nothing but conformity. Just nod, agree, repeat, and you will belong. And belonging, that is the drug people cannot resist. Many will betray their own intelligence just to belong. They will agree with what they don't believe. They will laugh at what they don't find funny. They will follow what they know is wrong, because the fear of being excluded is stronger than the desire to be truthful. And so wisdom dies, not because people cannot find it, but because they choose not to carry it. But here's the paradox that keeps repeating in history. Every breakthrough, every revolution, every awakening has always come from the ones who dared to stand apart. Those who were laughed at, isolated, even hated, were the ones who later became the voices remembered. The crowd always follows later. The crowd never leads. And yet, most people fear leaving the crowd. Have you noticed how society constantly rewards confidence over truth? The person who speaks with certainty, even when they are wrong, is often admired more than the quiet thinker who is correct. The confident liar is rewarded, while the humble truth-teller is ignored. That is the sickness of our age. Style is valued over substance. And when style rules, stupidity wears a crown. But deep down, people know something is wrong. That's why anxiety, depression, and emptiness are at record highs. Because humans are starving for meaning, and meaning cannot be found in shallow places. You can chase trends, likes, applause, but when the noise fades, you are left alone with yourself. And in that moment, all the lies fall apart. The question is, what will you have left? Most people fear this confrontation, but the wise person welcomes it. The wise person knows that silence is not empty. It is full of lessons, full of clarity, full of strength. That is why wisdom often begins in solitude. You will not find it in the crowd. You will not find it in applause. You will not find it in the endless noise of distraction. You will find it in the quiet moments when you face yourself honestly. And maybe that is why so many people resist wisdom. It feels too heavy. Wisdom asks you to take responsibility. It asks you to look in the mirror and admit that the problem is not only the world, but also you. And people would rather blame than change. They would rather complain than confront. They would rather point outward than look inward. But wisdom begins inward. And that journey terrifies those who are addicted to comfort. So here's a thought. Maybe the reason you've always felt restless, like something is missing, is because you are not satisfied with illusions. Maybe your mind refuses to be fed lies, no matter how sweet they taste. Maybe your hunger is proof that you are meant for something deeper. And if that's the case, then your restlessness is not a curse. It is a compass. It is pointing you toward wisdom, even while the world points you toward stupidity. But the choice is still yours, because wisdom does not force itself upon anyone. It waits, patient, quiet, steady. It waits for the one who is willing to seek. And if you choose it, you will pay a price. You will feel lonely at times. You will be misunderstood. You will be mocked. You will be told you are too serious, too deep, too different. But in exchange, you will gain something. The crowd never will. Clarity. And clarity is power. With clarity, you stop being manipulated. With clarity, you stop chasing meaningless approval. With clarity, you stop fearing the judgment of the crowd. Because you see what they don't. You see the game for what it is. And once you see it, you cannot be trapped by it anymore. That is the freedom wisdom offers. The world glorifies stupidity. Yes. But here's the twist. It only has power if you agree to participate. If you refuse, if you choose silence over noise, depth over surface, truth over performance, then the system loses its grip on you. You become untouchable in a way. Because while others are chasing applause, you are building understanding. While others are performing, you are transforming. And maybe this is why wisdom feels dangerous to the world. Because a wise person cannot be controlled. You cannot manipulate someone who sees through the illusion. You cannot buy someone who values. truth over comfort. You cannot seduce someone who understands the game. That is why wisdom is always attacked, always suppressed, always mocked. Because wisdom is freedom. And freedom terrifies those who profit from control. So the next time you feel the pressure to fit in, ask yourself, fit into what? A culture of distraction? A crowd of performers? A system that rewards noise over substance? Is that really what you want to belong to? Or do you want something more? Something lasting? Something real? Because here's the ultimate truth. Stupidity is loud but temporary. Wisdom is quiet but eternal. And while stupidity may rule the present moment, wisdom always rules the future. The question is, which side of history do you want to stand on? Distraction has become the silent thief of our time. It creeps in unnoticed, pulling the mind in 100 directions until nothing feels solid anymore. What once required long hours of thought is now skipped for quick opinions, and what once demanded deep silence is now drowned out by endless noise. People do not even realize it is happening because distraction wears the mask of entertainment, of productivity, of connection. But beneath it all, it weakens the very roots of the mind. The tragedy is that this state feels normal. People wake up reaching for their screens, filling their first moments of the day with borrowed voices instead of their own thoughts. By the time the day truly begins, their minds are already crowded, too full to hear the quiet guidance of their deeper self. And so, without noticing, they trade away the sharpness of their mind for the dull comfort of distraction. This is not by accident. A distracted population is easier to control. When people no longer think for themselves, they repeat whatever the crowd repeats. When people are addicted to constant stimulation, they will accept anything that entertains them, even if it leads them away from truth. In this way, stupidity is not just glorified, it is manufactured. It is fed to the public until they believe it is normal. Wisdom, on the other hand, does not shout. It does not beg for attention. It waits in silence, available to anyone who slows down long enough to notice it. That is why the few who choose stillness over chaos seem different, even threatening. They are not pulled in every direction, and because of that, they see the world with unusual clarity. Modern life punishes this clarity. It rewards those who follow, who join every trend, who never stand apart. To be wise is to be misunderstood, and to be misunderstood is to be isolated. But history shows us again and again that the isolated ones, the ones who dared to see differently, were often the very people who carried humanity forward. The problem is not that wisdom has disappeared. It is that people no longer have the patience for it. A short video clip feels easier than a long reflection. A trending phrase feels safer than a personal thought. And yet, the hunger for truth does not vanish. It lingers quietly in people's hearts, showing itself in moments of restlessness, in the nagging feeling that something is missing, even when life looks full. That hunger is the proof that wisdom is not dead, it is only waiting. The modern world celebrates the quick answer, but wisdom lives in the long silence. It celebrates the visible performance, but wisdom hides in the invisible work of the mind. It celebrates the crowd, but wisdom walks with the individual. And so anyone who chooses wisdom today will feel out of place. But that feeling is not a weakness. It is a sign that they have stepped outside the illusion. The truth is that most people are not ready for wisdom because wisdom demands something frightening: responsibility. It does not let you blame society or fate or luck. It forces you to look at yourself, to see where you have been blind, where you have been careless, where you have willingly chosen lies because they felt easier than truth. That kind of honesty is painful, and so people prefer distraction. But those who endure that pain gain a freedom that no distraction can ever provide. In the end, stupidity may be louder, more popular, and more comfortable, but it will always collapse under its own weight. Wisdom moves slowly, but it endures. It outlasts empires. It outlasts trends. It outlasts every lie. And when the noise finally fades, it is wisdom that remains standing. The challenge is simple, though not easy. Choose which voice you will follow, the world's noise or the quiet call within yourself. Most will choose the noise because it is easier. But a few, just a few, will choose differently. And those few will see the world as it really is, not as it pretends to be. Do not, because deep down, they do not truly hate you. They fear you. They fear the possibility that you might be proof of something they do not want to face, that their entire life has been built on illusions. And that is the most terrifying. Truth of all dot, so you must hold your ground. Even when the crowd pushes against you, even when the world tries to bury your silence in its noise, you must remain the mirror. Because for every person who turns away, there will be another who dares to look. And when they do, they will see themselves. They will see the emptiness of the chase. They will hear the whisper inside them that they had long forgotten. And just like you, they will begin to wake up. This is how change begins. Not with revolutions shouted in the streets, not with endless debates or grand speeches, but with individuals, daring to be real in a world addicted to illusion. One person at a time, one awakening at a time. And maybe this is why wisdom feels so rare today. Not because it has disappeared, but because it has become quiet. It has stepped out of the marketplace of noise and returned to where it always lived in, the silence of the human heart. The question is not whether wisdom still exists. The question is whether you are willing to seek it, hear it, and live by it. Think about your own life right now. How much of it is truly yours? How many of your choices are shaped by what you really want, and how many are just answers to what others expect? How much of your identity is built on approval, and how much on truth? If you stripped away the roles, the labels, the masks, what would remain? Would you recognize yourself? Would you be proud of what you see? These questions are not comfortable. They are not meant to be, but they are the doorway to freedom. Because once you ask them, you cannot go back to pretending. You cannot unknow the truth. You may try to run, but the whisper will always follow you. Until you stop, until you face it, until you choose. And here is the choice. You can live as a shadow, repeating what the crowd tells you, forever restless, forever chasing. Or you can live as yourself, uncertain, yes, but real. Lonely at times, yes, but free. Invisible to the crowd, perhaps, but unforgettable to those who matter. The world does not need more noise. It does not need more shallow opinions, more loud distractions, more empty victories. What it needs, what it has always needed, are people willing to see clearly, to stand still, to be real. And that can be you. So the next time you feel that quiet discomfort, that small whisper in the middle of the night, do not ignore it. Do not drown it out with noise. Listen, because that whisper is not your enemy. It is your guide. It is the oldest part of you, calling you back to who you really are. And if you follow it, step by step, no matter how uncertain, you will discover a truth that no crowd, no system, no illusion can ever take away, that your life belongs to you, that your mind is yours to think with, that your soul is yours to shape. This is the secret society of the awake, invisible to the many, but uncheckable within themselves, walking quietly, but carrying a light that no darkness can touch. And one day, when others finally stop running, when the noise of the world finally wears them down, they will remember that there was someone who stood still, someone who refused the game, someone who lived differently. And they will think of you. So ask yourself right now, with all honesty, when that day comes, when the world looks back at you, Will they see another restless shadow? Or will they see someone who dared to be real? The choice is yours. It has always been yours. And if you choose it, your life will no longer be a performance. It will be a truth. And truth, even whispered, is louder than all the noise in the world. If you've stayed with me until now, it means a part of you already feels what I've been saying. Maybe you've always sensed that the world is louder than it should be, and that silence carries more truth than noise ever will. That realization is not small. It's the beginning of something powerful. So, if this message spoke to you, don't let it end here. Carry it with you. Think about it the next time you catch yourself chasing approval or drowning in distractions. Ask yourself, am I living as myself or as someone else's idea of me? That question alone can change everything. And if you want to keep exploring these ideas with me, make sure you subscribe and stay connected. This channel is where we dive deeper into the hidden layers of human psychology, philosophy, and power. Each video is designed to challenge the way you see the world, and more importantly, the way you see yourself. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your attention, because in today's world, attention is the rarest form of currency. Until next time, stay awake, stay aware, and most of all, stay true to yourself.